I've seen Active Souls online for ages, and my friend Liz goes and absolutely loves it. I unfortunately work at the times that it's on, so can't go. But after looking at it online, thought, what a great opportunity to see if we could get my sort of clients involved. And obviously the whole point of what my business is to try and encourage people to want to learn languages. So if we make it fun, then it's a really good idea. So I've teamed up with Active Souls to try and initially just with Spanish and just with kids to play games and make the kind of learning side of it fun. So yeah.
And this is kind of an outdoor experience, I guess. Is that the idea?
Yep, so fingers crossed if the good old Manx weather holds out, we'll be able to do it in Nobles Park, but we're meeting near the little sheltered bit so that if needs be we can go and hide from the rain, but yeah, plenty of space to run around.
And there's some different sessions for different age groups, is that right?
Yeah, so we thought we'd kind of split it between 2 different age groups because you can't always put really young ones with really old ones because physically there's going to be a little bit of a clash anyway, and in terms of how much they can take in and understand, we want them to be on the same level. No one feels left out. So
are you expecting these kids to be sort of complete beginners with no words at all? Is that the idea?
Well, the whole point is it's just exposure to the language and learning it, so they can play games, and we're going to teach them everything they need to know there and then. They're not going to have anything beforehand. Obviously it's helpful if you want to come and consolidate anything you know, but this is just to introduce people to the language. So
I noticed a little thing at the bottom of the post saying the sessions are currently running for kids only, but there is potential for an adults version further down the line as well.
Yeah, well, because my main issue is trying to get the kids excited about it, because any adults that come to me want to learn, so they're really ready to put something into it. So that was the whole idea of introducing play, and I didn't know whether or not adults would have too many inhibitions to want to do it, but then after speaking to Mikey, he said, well, the whole point is to make exercise fun, it's to make it like play, and adults love doing that, so maybe we could kind of put a bit more of an advanced one on for adults. We've had a couple of people say they'd be interested anyway, so it's on the horizon possibly.
Yeah. And there's mention a bit about some old school games where children will be learning through play. Tell us a bit about some of those ideas, if you could.
So basically what Mikey operates on, I think, is the whole idea of the games that you play when you're at school, like bench ball and throwing things at people, or like catching things or whatever else. So it's not really difficult games to grasp. It's just going to be a case of maybe having a TV remote sort of thing and shout and stop, play, pause, but in Spanish. So it's games that they'd normally play at Active Souls, but with a Spanish twist.
And if people do decide they've got a penchant for it, what's the sort of next step then?
So it depends, obviously, on Mikey's availability. I don't want to kind of just commandeer his idea either. But if it's something that he'd be interested in, maybe a permanent session. So the next step would be getting French ones in as well, getting older kids involved and maybe having a couple of different ones over the weekend. Obviously there's only so much I can do physically as one person, and Mikey can, but yeah, we'll see what happens with it.
I forget exactly how old Conversa is now, but it's not been going all that long.
January.
So
founded, yeah.
What's the experience been like, I guess, so far?
Massive learning curve, because I have no business background whatsoever, and it's a case of just doing things wrong and learning from them rather than knowing what I need to do. But I've completely loved it. There's always support on the Isle of Man for small businesses in one way or another, whether or not it's like monetary or just advice. And I've got a pretty good network of people around me anyway, which has been really good. But it's been a very good 7 months, 8 months. Oof.
Well, A, it's still going. You're still going.
Yeah.
And B, you were saying to me just off mic that you're finding yourself to be really busy. Does that mean maybe we're going to see some expansion, perhaps?
Hopefully, if there's the people out there. So as a result of being on Manx Radio, when was it? When did we come in?
You're testing me
a
now.
while ago.
It is a good while ago, yeah.
There was Stephanie Kelsey on here from the Jolla Wand, and I've taken her licence over. So I'll be going into primary schools and hopefully doing some outside classes as well. But again, as one person, there's only so much I can do. So I will be advertising soon for French and Spanish tutors to give me a hand. So
tell us a bit more about La Jolla Wand. What does that kind of encompass, I guess?
Okay, so it's a set tailored programme for kids between 0 to 12 years old. At the moment, Steph's only been doing French, but I'm bringing the Spanish side to it. And they're normally 2-year courses, with books for the primary schools that you go into. So the children will buy the book and they can come in and do the lessons all the way through. They can just do 1 year, they can do 2 years, however much they want. But you don't have to have had any experience to do any of the lessons. So even if you are in a class with, so say you've got a child in year 3 and there's been kids in years 1 and 2 doing it up to there, and in year 3 you can join in at that point. You won't be at any disadvantage because you'll learn the vocab they've used because you're going to just use it in general anyway, but you'll learn the new stuff, so there's no one's going to be at any disadvantage at all. And the whole point is to give kids a good grounding, because I really don't understand how they justified cutting languages in primary schools and then expected kids to go to high school and pass exams with only a couple of years. And it's not even a full year, is it? You're not at school for the full year and there's only an hour, 2 hours a week of language lessons. I don't understand how kids are expected then to pass an exam in it, when we see kids in European countries, for example, learning from the age of 3 English phrases, and they're always surrounded by it, and we haven't got the opportunity. So why cut it and make it more difficult for us to learn languages?
As we discussed on the Perspective programme, the earlier you start learning or even just have some exposure to languages, the easier it is, right? Is that something you subscribe to?
Yes and no, because I also don't want to subscribe to the fact that you can't learn it as an adult, because the amount of people that are like, oh, I'm too old to do it, I don't have time, everything else. You always have time and you're never too old to learn something. It's a skill, it's not an art. So there's a set process that you can follow to ensure that it works. And also, again, it's not an art, so it's not like you're going to be any better at it. It's a case of how much you put into it and how much you expose yourself to it. So, yeah, I mean, obviously being young does help because you're still in the language acquisition period. So you're learning things, because when you learn English, you don't have anything to base it on. You don't have your own language to kind of compare it to. So if you've got 2 languages that you're learning at the same time, they do it in a different way to language learning. You acquire it. But that's a different thing altogether. But yeah, as a child, you soak it up a little bit easier, but then you kind of plateau because you get to a point where you need to then start doing the grammar of it, which is, you need to study that.
So when you teach children versus when you teach adults, are there significantly different methods from your point of view?
Yeah, so when I teach kids, I get a lot of ping pong balls thrown at me, because you have to play games to keep them interested.
Occupational hazard, I think.
Yeah, no, I bought a bow and arrow set the other day to play a game with. That was a bad idea, really bad idea, but the thought was there. But yeah, with kids, you kind of have to play a little bit more and not make them think they're in a classroom learning. But then you can still play games with adults, but there's only so far that can get you, because I try not to teach them vocab because that's a waste of their time. They can do that themselves. But yeah, there's slight differences. But then when they get to kind of, I suppose, like GCSE standard, you're going to need to learn proper grammar. So